Drafting a Brock Bowers main event team out of the 104 spot. That's what we're doing today on Stealing Bananas. I'm Ben Gretch. You can find the Stealing Signals newsletter at bengretch.substack.com. With me, as always, is Shawn Siegele. You can find all of his great work over at RotoViz. For those on YouTube, you can see that we are already into the third round. We're a little slow to get on, had a little technical difficulties. It is an afternoon draft here that we decided to jump in no more than an hour ago. We drew the 104. The first three were Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs. We decided on Bowers over Lamb. Did discuss Lamb there for a decent amount. On the way back, the Devon Achane has been sliding. He goes RB8 in the middle of the second. Looks like 207. Bucky Irving goes 208. And we took Jonathan Taylor at 209. Pretty clearly the last running back on the board for both of us. A.J. Brown, Ladd McConkey, George Kittle, some other players at other positions that maybe would have been in consideration in that range. We took Jonathan Taylor. Those guys all go at the turn. Josh Jacobs, Omarion Hampton go at the turn. Josh Allen at 303 when we were back up at 304. We decided on Jackson Smith and Jigba over pulling up some of our favorite rookies that are, rising, but are guys that we also were discussing in that range. They do tend to go a little bit later, so we're hoping to get a little bit better prices on some of our favorite options. So JSN, still somebody that we're really high on. Shawn, you've been leading the charge on that and wrote a very good piece about him. We do get him at 304. So the start is Bowers, Taylor, JSN. Travion Henderson, one of our favorites, just went at 401. It's around the turn, heading back to us in the fourth. How you doing, Shawn?
Good. Man, so good, Ben. This is so much fun. Been enjoying our drafts. Had a chance to do ship chasing last night and draft from the 104. And those guys, like us, have a lot of Bowers. And so we went CeeDee Lamb. Devon Achane came back. Lamb Achane is a pretty fun way to start it. I'm excited for you. You're going to be recording with them tonight, which means probably by the time this is posted, that draft will also be something folks can go check out. You guys have the 102. The interesting thing here, I think, and kind of the difficulty or the fun part about it is it's sort of JSN versus McMillan. And we do still hope to get some other picks in that 7 through 12 range later on in draft season. If we take a lot of McMillan and a lot of Henderson early, you get some unique teams. Maybe you just get the best team. You want to draft the best players. We're into the time of the season where you don't want to get too cute, especially at the high dollar level. But the reason I think that we want to go receiver there, with it being JSN or McMillan, who does here go at the 404, is to keep the pathway open for some of these additional fun running backs. And I've been sort of pushing the idea that you can go running back early and then lean into the zero RB candidates late. Many of those builds, you will still have receivers in the flex to start, but you might have 4 running backs in the flex or 4 running backs in the lineup, 2 running backs in the flex to finish your season. And basically what we're going for here is the very highest scoring overall roster that you can put together. But there does get to be a point where if you draft too many running backs, then that won't work for the reasons we've always discussed. That was kind of the impetus for the JSN pick there over, a fun luxury pick like Travion Henderson.
Yeah, that makes sense because you do really like RJ Harvey still in this range, which we are on deck and we'll probably get to that discussion in a second. Although Xavier Worthy is still here. So I think if he doesn't go here, that's probably the pick, correct?
That would be a sprint to the podium type of selection for me. I know he's become very controversial, obviously. And Bobby Conley just always is. Jalen Royals having a great camp. And I don't think that I don't think there's overwhelming buzz on Worthy, which you certainly would like to have as a second-year player with his pedigree. But then the thing about Xavier Worthy is just so bizarre. I was looking at the numbers again last night just to make sure I'm not wrong about this, because the numbers are so glaring that, and then the lack of interest in him is so clear that you start to really doubt, like, have I made a bunch of mistakes? Where is the error here? From week 12 on last season, Xavier Worthy played in 9 games, scored 17.6 points per game. Nico Collins played in 8, scored 16.6. Probably Nico went out of one of those games early, but it's just bizarre to me that someone who was so white hot down the stretch of his rookie season in a year where he's 21 years old, coming off of being a first round draft pick, fastest man in the NFL, best freshman season or one of the best freshman seasons in college football history. And now in a situation where Rashee Rice may miss half the season. I mean, how is he not going where AJ Brown and Ladd McConkey are going? And so again, probably when that's the case, I'm looking at least at some portions of it incorrectly. But I really like this price. This is a price where even if you get a lot of it wrong, I think you end up being fine.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to score points. The way that I've seen it described is like he's not going to score, and that's very bizarre. People say he's a manufactured touch merchant. He got a lot of manufactured touches down the stretch, and that's not a bad thing. There's a lot about, he can't beat the press and he can't track balls downfield and all these things. I mean, the way that I've been saying that whenever I get in those conversations is you better be right, because you're saying that he's going to get all these manufactured touches. The Chiefs want to use him. They're going to get the ball in his hands with intent. He had several rushing TDs last year. Can't remember the exact number. In addition to
over 100 rushing yards. I mean, it's basically him, Jameson Williams, Jaden Reed, and then Debo in kind of a slightly separate category. But those guys could all end up with more rushing value than Debo, or it could go down to more or less zero. But the dynamism with the ball in the hands for Worthy and Reed and Jameson Williams, you can't ignore those things. I mean, that matters not just in terms of points, but what it tells you about how the team thinks.
Yeah. And all that stuff, exactly, in terms of what the team thinks, all that stuff's still going to exist. They're not going to not use Xavier Worthy, this fastest man that they showed you as soon as they started started using that manufactured touch stuff. He had 5+ catches for the first time, week 13 or whatever it was, and then he had 5+ catches every game for the rest of the year through the Super Bowl, other than week 18 is the stat that I keep sharing. Once they started doing that, they didn't stop doing that. He had a floor of volume. And then also he's the fastest guy downfield, and they want to be better at deep throwing, and they tried to throw deep to him. He had the air yards last year. I mean, you better be right that he can't be efficient down the field, because if he's going to get manufactured touches every game and bombs from Patrick Mahomes, you better be very right that he can't catch any of them. Like that's all that there really is to it for me. We are one pick away here, and it does go 5 receivers and Jalen Hurts at the turn. Jameson Williams does come back around if we wanted to do a receiver. For me, Sean, the pick is probably RJ Harvey after we got the great price on Worthy. I assume that's what you're leaning to, unless you want to go Jameson. Those are kind of the two plays, right?
They're the two plays. Williams is going late 5. Harvey is going 502. These are prices just from the last basically 2 days, 50+ drafts.
And we like the receivers at 6'7".
I mean, it's hard to pass on Jameson Williams here because he's basically also Xavier Worthy. But I mean, RJ Harvey. When am I thinking about this? This is another one where I really question myself, because you can't take the preseason seriously, and we know that. But how good Troy Franklin looks, how good Pat Bryant looks, the fact that they were willing to and like make an obvious trade of Devon Vele.
I've been giving you so much crap about the Broncos receivers, and I'm going to be so wrong.
Well, it does seem like we're going to need to go in on that one where he drafted the 2 defenses kind of messing around at the end and put in a bid there for Troy Franklin. Maybe we can get him. But yeah, when you look at this whole thing and you think, okay, well, they also have Courtland Sutton, they also have Marvin Mims. Again, preseason, but it was really fun seeing what the exact vision is for Evan Ingram, where he catches one of these passes. And yes. I just don't think that you have to be there's justifiably, there's some concern about Evan Ingram's peripherals last season, and he wasn't as good after the catch as he has been sometimes, and that could potentially matter if you're throwing a bunch of short passes and asking him to make guys miss. I think he's going to catch the ball in space and run. And so Evan Ingram is one of the guys who is kind of weird for me, where I have had him ranked above ADP all offseason pretty considerably, but don't really have him as a clear target and haven't selected him a bunch myself. which probably is the way I'm thinking is still fine, especially when you think about how good those young receivers may be. But the Broncos are going to challenge to lead the NFL in points.
Yep.
And that makes RJ Harvey in round 5 look really good.
So 2 things I want to circle back on that I was thinking we would do on this long turn here. And now you've opened up another very fun conversation. So 3 topics we got to get to. One, I keep getting asked about the Rashee Rice suspension, maybe not being until week 4. What does that mean for Xavier Worthy? I got tagged in the Stealing Signals Discord. There's like a podcast and mailbag channel there. And it was like, can you please get Shawn to talk about that? Because, you're the high guy on Worthy. And so people do want to hear your thoughts on how the Rice suspension may impact Worthy. Anyway, I want to come back to that one. The second thing I want to say, you were talking through the different running back approaches. We do take Jonathan Taylor there. We take Harvey. You can take Travion Henderson in these middle rounds. You're talking about, you do want to consider the early running backs. There are a couple dead zone options. And then you mentioned several rounds ago now, obviously the importance of the 0 RB options. We got to talk about the fact that the 0 RB countdown, the single best piece of fantasy content in the fantasy football space, has published this week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We were recording this Friday afternoon. I don't know that 1 through 5 is out as I'm saying this. I've been waiting for it. I've got my guesses.
And it's a Blair. We'll see. We'll see how clean it was, and if it comes out while we're in this draft.
Yeah, I'm assuming it will be out and certainly it will be out by the time people are listening to this podcast. I've got my guesses in. I'm super excited. It is obviously must-read stuff. What I love is, Shawn, you don't like to brag about your hits, but you do keep a little running tracker, and it's good for all of us who have been reading the countdown for years to remember how helpful it has been. I just enjoy that, and so you have the little, these are the names that were on the tracker, and I say this in my own running back stuff, and I'm running my running back tiers piece that's going to come out. But I like to wait for your thing, and I wrote it in the intro. Like your 0 RB countdown changes my opinions. It's one of the positional things that will immediately change the way that I'm considering any player that I may not be thinking of correctly. People need to check that out. Shawn, the Broncos thing as well is the third thing. Maybe we'll circle back to Worthy, maybe we won't. Evan Ingram, I've had him lower than consensus. I've talked about the rotating routes in Denver. I did my tight end tiers piece the other day. Ingram ended up being the cover boy. I've moved him up to tight end 7. He used to be a fade in my targets and fades. He is now a target, clear one for me. I made him I think I just said this, the cover boy. For multiple reasons. One, I was kind of joking out the fantasy community talking about this Joker thing as it relates to Sean Payton. It's not important, but in the offseason, the way I was reading some of the conversations and some of the stuff was that, maybe they didn't see him as favorably as some people who were saying Sean Payton or Evan Ingram is going to be Sean Payton's Joker. Maybe they weren't seeing him that well. Kay Adams was, just doing her camp tour, and she was in Denver, and she was asking Sean Payton about the Joker thing, and obviously he's being coy, and they ask him about RJ Harvey, and he says he doesn't have his Joker wings yet and all this stuff, and then he talks about how they love to have multiple Jokers and all these things, and then she brings up Evan Ingram, and he very directly says Evan Ingram is a Joker. And so for someone like me who was behind the times and didn't have the read on it that everyone else did, that was the first thing. And then you mentioned the catch and run for 50 plus yards and seeing the movement skills and the ability in the offense in a very small amount of time. And because obviously the first team is not playing a lot in the preseason game. That was great to see from Evan Ingram. And then the Vele trade, who ran a lot of his routes in the slot last year. You're kind of thinking of Ingram as competition. I think that really opens up the slot routes for Evan Ingram as much as it opens it up for all the other receivers. I joked with you just now that I'm going to be wrong on the receivers. I do still think they're going to rotate behind Courtland Sutton. It's always been a Sean Payton thing, but I think Evan Ingram is going to run way more routes than I was thinking when I did my projections 2 months ago. And he's gone from a complete fade to me to a real target in these ranges. And so you mentioned not getting a lot of him. I'll be excited to get some more of him as those opportunities arise for us in our builds. I think he's somebody you do want to have exposure to, and I've been trying to make up for it in best ball drafts and those things a little bit recently. But I agree with you. The offense looks incredible. Everyone's super excited about Marvin Mims, and you should be, about his usage in the preseason and all the efficiency last year. But Troy Franklin is having an incredible preseason, as you mentioned. Pat Bryant looks awesome. He looked really good in preseason week 2. He's another guy that's probably going to benefit, although I'm getting the impression he may just be like a Sutton handcuff at this point for that X role. Sutton didn't play, and Bryant was like, it seemed like was in that role, that number one receiver role in the Peyton offense. But I was with you. I felt like this offense was going to be really dynamic. You do want pieces of it, even if the routes aren't incredible. Bo Nix is really interesting at that point because he's one way to play it where you don't have to get all the other stuff right. His price has been difficult. But RJ Harvey, as you said, is a great way to play it as well. I think J.K. Dobbins is a very fine way to play it too. I want exposure. This offense is going to be really good, as you said. That's a takeaway that I think is very important. Before being able to let you speak on any of that stuff, we got to make our pick because I filibustered through the entire 5-6 turn. We're back on deck here. And I'm not even doing a very good job of figuring out who the pick would be for me here in late 6 in my own rankings.
It feels like clearly Jalen Waddle or Jerry Jeudy.
I was just going to say it feels like Jalen Waddle. I'm looking for, as I was saying that, in my own rankings, I was looking for Jalen Waddle because 7 guys behind him have already gone in my wide receiver rankings. He is my highest receiver. If you want to go Jeudy, that's fine. Okay, we do take Waddle there. The only so Judy's got a little bit of a later ADP and might come back around, correct?
Yeah, I don't think he'll come back around, but this is a unique opportunity to take Waddle, and I don't know how happy I am that we got Waddle twice now, but man, Tyreek Hill seems desperate to play for a different team. If he were more with it, you would certainly say that. The obliviousness factor means that probably he's just, doing his thing. But I'm going to take your word for it that Jalen Waddle is having a good camp, that he is improved. And certainly at this price where he goes off at wide receiver 33, though the dream I had, which I knew wasn't going to come to fruition, Devontae Smith had fallen a decent little amount, and I would have loved to have gotten him there late in 6. That would be an absolutely absurd price. His ADP is 602. He falls here, only like 4 spots, but when it starts to get close to you, you start to get excited.
Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt goes 701 here. I mean, we should talk about him too, probably. I just think that's absurd. I do think he's, well, you're going to have probably some writing about him, I would assume, hitting the hitting newsstands soon. So maybe you don't want to spoil all of that. But
my take on Cross-Merritt is that he doesn't get to be a clearly bad pick until he is essentially ahead of Tony Pollard.
So you're comfortable with it in this range. I mean, I've never really loved the Commanders' backs. They're going to have explosive runs, and I know you're really into that. I'm really concerned about the pass catching. It's not in his profile, and it's not in his offense necessarily. And I also am thinking about how when they traded Jahan Dotson last year, it was not to open up anything for Luke McCaffrey or anyone else. It was to move on from Jahan Dotson. I don't necessarily buy that they weren't just moving on from Brian Robinson because of the 4 backs collectively. They do really like, I mean, I know people are like, it's not Chris Rodriguez, but they like what he is on the roster. They like what Jeremy McNichols is. They like Austin Eckler. Obviously, Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt is a guy that's elevating, but it could still be a pretty big committee. I don't think it's as direct as they traded Brian Robinson for Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt. He made the team. And they definitely didn't want to pass him through waivers. And I think it's clear the other 3 backs are guys they still wanted to be on the team. We do get Jerry Jeudy coming back around. Rashee Rice goes there. Is
And
there
we're
any reason
definitely
we
Judy here, right?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if there was any reason we wouldn't take Judy, and I was not coming up with one. I'm sorry. What topic do you want to answer? I've been talking way too much in the last 2 rounds. Do you want to talk about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt? Do you want to address that Xavier Worthy question, or do you want to talk about the Broncos some more?
So to kind of go through some of the different pieces here, I do think on the one hand, I mean, it would be ideal if Rice misses from the beginning. There's the possibility that if he doesn't, that it's more favorable because maybe that means they continue not to come to an agreement and they do go all the way to that hearing and the Rice side loses and he's out for like 10 games. In which case, again, I mean, Worthy is massively undervalued. It's weird here because there was a time during the season where Rice at kind of the 2-3 turn and Worthy at the 409 was a price that you could get on those two guys and that seemed to make sense. For Worthy to still be in that same area when Rice is at the 702. Now, some of the things that have happened since then are that camp started and there was this hubbub sort of centering around the fact that Rice was drawing a ton of targets. And I think that's good for Rice. I think it's a strong sign that his target volume there underneath was going to be very robust. As things have developed, you get more with Jalen Royals and how good he is and how much they've had to use him or want to use him so they can cover this Rice suspension. There's this at least mild possibility that because they know they're going to lose Rice throughout the middle of the season, that even in the early going, he is de-emphasized a little bit. They don't want to build their entire first month offense around someone who's then going to leave. You would want to have a more balanced attack. You're going to develop the guys like a Royals and make sure that you are using Worthy to the full extent where you have him unlocked. You're threatening teams deep. You still do have the manufactured touches and you really have the offense humming. I guess that's the big question I have. It's not really Rice. It's not really the length of the suspension or when it is. It's not really Worthy. I guess for me, it's more Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Do they have the pieces here? Does Brashard Smith? I mean, it seems pretty obvious at this point that he's going to make the team. Although, some of the camp reports, you get one thing like very far out on one edge one day, very far out on the other edge the next day. We've got folks reporting, and in some cases, like the same guy reporting that the Chiefs are looking for a back, and then the Brashard Smith will play with the first team offense. Now, the first team offense in preseason week 3 may be meaningless in that the first guys out there are still third and fourth team guys. So again, what do those reports mean? But it seems to me, Ben, that where we are with the Chiefs running backs is that they do like Pacheco and they do think that Brashard Smith will eventually work into something useful, but they've got a gap at the rest of it where Kareem Hunt can't play, Elijah Mitchell can't play, Carson Steele is someone that you probably be better off if he doesn't make the roster. And they're sort of looking for a third piece because Pacheco and Smith aren't enough. I bring this up within the context of the Worthy conversation because a month ago, I was very excited about how the Chiefs looked. And you get those early reports that Brashard Smith looks good, that Jalen Royals looks good. And you're thinking, okay, this is going to be the offense, and these guys are going to take back over. I guess those vibes have really dissipated. And I have more concerns about the Chiefs being a little bit more 2024-ish, a little bit more 2023-ish. You're going to lose Rice for a big chunk, which, I mean, that's a massive loss for Patrick Mahomes in terms of how you see his thesis. I guess that's the part that gets me more than this Rice Worthy debate is I'm moving back into the vicinity of being frustrated and nervous with just with the Chiefs offense itself.
Yeah, that will be interesting to track. As you were talking through some of the Rice stuff, I'm definitely concerned about I mean, I don't think I had even really thought about that idea that you said closer to the beginning of that Rice, if it goes to arbitration, that Rice could lose and get 10 games. Everyone's like, well, how much lower than that? That's what the NFL wanted, was 10 games, but how much lower than that's going to be? I feel like the conversations that I have, I'm saying to people, 6 feels like the minimum, because that's what it says in the personal conduct policy. And the NFL feels that they have enough evidence credibly to go above 6. So, I mean, people still think it's going to be less than 6. And I guess I have a pretty hard time understanding how that would wind up being the result. It seems like the NFLPA and Rice's side and the Chiefs are saying there's nothing beyond the minimum 6. Maybe they want to go way lower than 6. Maybe that, there has been some, when I talk to some people, they talk about like, well, maybe the issue and the reason they're going to arbitration is that, he wanted 2 games or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. I just hadn't, like, the whole conversation winds up being, is it going to be 4? Is it going to be 6, etc.? And I've been on, like, feel like I've been on the high side saying it's going to be at least 6, right? Like, it's got to be, like, and people are saying there's no precedent for it. There's no precedent for the fact that his plea deal was 5 years probation and 30 days in jail that he has to serve. At some point, he gets to choose. I mean, it's not like but like, he didn't get a plea deal where he got out of legitimate jail time. This is a serious offense.
It's a really bad act.
Yeah. So people are, I think, a little bit overconfident in terms of what it's all going to mean. And the fact that they haven't settled and can't come to a settlement does kind of tell you that the NFL thinks they're going to make an example out of this or win this one, that they have the ability to win this one. And also that what they want is pretty aggressive. And, obviously the Rice camp is not, satisfied and doesn't want to take those settlement terms or whatever it may be. But the settlement terms may be 8 games that they're asking for. And they're saying, well, if we go to arbitration, we're going to push for 10. And so, Rice and his team may be saying, man, we're just trying to get it down to 6. I don't know. I mean, I'm just totally speculating, but the way that you said that was maybe the first time that I thought about the possibility that it could be 10 games. I guess I hadn't really, I know people have said, it could go all the way through the fantasy playoffs. And I'm like, it won't go that far. I don't know. It's a lot, potentially a lot. We are on deck here. And Jordan Addison makes it all the way back to us as we get on the clock here.
Then our next question is, like, how low are you on Jordan Addison if they add Adam Thielen?
That's going to be the next thing that we're asked.
Well, for us here making this pick, and then that will be the next question. Yes.
Are you concerned about that, or are you being facetious?
Well, Thielen can draw some targets in the right situation. It's always tough, and this again is the thing with Rice, where if you're not there and someone else establishes rapport,
sure,
and maybe potentially, especially a young QB establishes rapport with a guy who is just easy to get the ball to, you can trust where he's going to be. He's not going to outrun your passes.
I did not think that when we logged on today, I didn't anticipate Shawn Siegele making Adam Thielen is going to make the Jordan Addison breakout more difficult case today. This is surprising to me. I do agree with your point, generally speaking. I think I had a tweet this morning when I saw the Thielen thing that you really got to be into Jalen Coker now. And people, I mean, like, whether Jalen Coker or whether Adam Thielen was really that, somebody said to me that I'm double counting or something, because I said I was already very, very high on Coker. I made a comment. It's getting hard to move him higher up in my rankings. I already had him in the 50s at wide receiver. His ADP is wide receiver 81. And the person was like, double counting, tisk or something was the reply. And I replied to them, this isn't double counting. I didn't expect Adam Thielen to get moved. And Adam Thielen getting moved means they're making routes for Coker. And when Coker runs routes, he has more likely he's running them against weaker competition. I was loosely describing that I think his targets per route would be higher without Adam Thielen on the field, which is something that you're sort of describing here. I do think it's an interesting consideration. Jaden Reed goes 2 picks later. You did take Addison while we were discussing that. My question would have been, who else would you have been interested in at 809? Because that felt like a really good price on Addison.
It does feel like a good price. And with him, he's had a chance to work. Well, and Rice has obviously plenty of rapport with Patrick Mahomes, but with Addison, I think it's actually kind of cool and helpful that Justin Jefferson has been out for so long because it allows someone who's going to be suspended to work with the young starting QB and really develop that connection, which it's just a handful of passes, but seemingly was just glaringly obvious in the
Yeah.
preseason game, right? And so he gets a little bit more of a moat than he might otherwise have had because Jefferson has been out. And so that probably insulates him a bit from what's going to happen where he misses those 3 weeks. Certainly isn't irrelevant. I mean, you are building your team not expecting to get Jordan Addison points clearly during the suspension, but probably in the first game or two back from that, even in terms of just seeing how things come together. You don't want him to be a clear-cut starting lineup guy. The player that I would have floated potentially was Michael Pittman with Daniel Jones now in place in order to make space to take either Scatterboo or Blue with this pick. So now we're kind of looking at those three guys, I think. Are those the three you're looking at here? They are the players kind of by ADP who probably don't come back. Do you have a preference for player or structure?
I don't have a strong preference. Those are sort of the players. I would also have J.K. Dobbins in the conversation normally, but we have Harvey and Tucker Kraft. I mean, we already have Bowers, but man, it seems like a good price. I'm okay. So I hear what you're saying. I'm comfortable structurally either way. I don't think it has to be a receiver with Addison suspension. I'm fine with our first four. So we can go to the running back that you were wanting to go to. Okay, so we take Scatterboo there. I actually do have Blue one spot ahead of Scatterboo at this point, but I'm very comfortable with Scatterboo. I'm glad to see that you're this optimistic still on Scatterboo because I've been taking him a decent amount. And the Tyrone Tracy stuff has broken very favorably for Tracy. But I do still think probably profile-wise, Scatterboo is very nice. Pittman is a good point. I still have him a little bit lower in the rankings, but probably want to move him up. I wrote my wide receiver tiers column yesterday as well, and felt and talked about how I think Downs and Pittman are very undervalued with the Daniel Jones news. They've always been, but we didn't talk about it enough because it seemed like it was going to be Richardson. That was something that we talked a lot about, Sean, in the early going of draft season when it seemed more like it was going to be Daniel Jones, that these guys were being unfairly discounted. I mean, Pittman's going to be really good, but it is going to be a little bit crowded because the Tyler Warren stuff is very exciting. Downs is going to be available in week 1. Anyway,
I mean, I
how
kind
are
of
you?
already regret this pick because I want so many running backs from this point. And I mean, Michael Pittman's price is utterly absurd. He's the prototypical guy who's going to just be he's going to run all the routes. He's going to be a massive target hog in this offense with Daniel Jones pulling the trigger. The offense is going to run a ton of plays. It's going to be a successful offense. That's the part I think that I might have a slight disagreement with the fantasy community on. I think that Daniel Jones can be pretty bad.
Functional. Yeah.
I think he can be pretty bad. And with the pieces around him and the coaching, they will move the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happens, I mean, again, why is Michael Pittman still there? There are players all over the last 3 rounds who are not as good and established as Michael Pittman and are not in as good a situation.
Yeah, I'm frustrated too because we should have taken Pittman. Yeah, that's one I've been on for quite a while as well. I'm with you. I mean, the case that I was making back around projection season was, I mean, the guy had 156 targets in 2023 in 16 games. He had 141 in 2022. There were people that were pushing him all the way up to the 3rd round. I talked at the time about but I didn't have that profile, but he did deserve to be I remember writing a couple of years ago that when he was going in the 3rd round, he's not a target here, but I could totally see myself being in on him when he's going in the 7th round in a couple of years. And now he's going in the 9th round for reasons that aren't. He had a broken back last year. That still had 111 targets. The way that Daniel Jones has operated the offense has been very functional in the preseason for people who have not watched it. But that's what you're referring to. That's what I've seen. It's very clear. If you watch that's why it was very clear that he was going to win the quarterback job, to me at least, or it felt that way. I wrote about it in the preseason stealing signals right up after week 1 of the preseason. Anthony Richardson was not just got himself hurt, he was missing throws and he didn't get through his progressions on one. He was late, almost threw an interception the first time he needed to come off his first read. Daniel Jones seamlessly came off his first read and hit Adonai Mitchell on a backside dig. And you could just see the difference between the two in terms of being able to get through the progressions and keep the offense on schedule. And that's the stuff when you hear Shane Steichen's comments, people are so, some people who are Richardson fans are so mad that he went with Daniel Jones. There was a comment when he got asked about it, was like, basically like he was saying it that way. The offense is more functional. I'm able to run my offense with Daniel Jones. And that's, I think, what was very clear there in watching it. The thing that I'm hearing from you that I didn't really expect or think through, and you're so good at crystallizing these things, Downs has been hurt. He's going to be back week 1, but you're saying that Michael Pittman should be going ahead of Josh Downs. And Josh Downs is a really fun profile, breakout candidate. But when we did talk about it early on in the offseason, a while back, closer to the draft or whenever, when we were doing some of our first drafts, I remember that was sort of the point I was making. I love Josh Downs, but Michael Pittman should be basically right behind him. Whenever Josh Downs goes, you can just take Michael Pittman. There's no reason there should be a gap between the two. But you're saying maybe at this point that Pittman should be going even ahead. I think everyone is pushing Pittman down because they are also pushing Downs down because of the injury. And they're like, well, Pittman's behind Downs. Downs is the breakout candidate. But Pittman should just be going ahead of him now.
You probably should. One of the things that you do get out of sort of Indianapolis media and folks who discuss that team, the Colts fans, is just this recognition of the fact that Michael Pittman, in addition to having to deal with Anthony Richardson, he was injured last season and he played through it for the whole season. Now, a lot of guys are going to be playing at less than 100%, but I do think that if you're saying, okay, he had a season that still is kind of in the mix of where he's currently being drafted with Anthony Richardson and playing at like 70%. I mean, it's not fun, but it's massively exploitable.
He doesn't turn 28 until October 5th of this year. So it's his age 28 year, but he's going to go into the year at age 27 still. It's not like this guy's old or anything. I mean, he's right in the middle of his prime. And again, 99 catches in 2022, 109 in 2023. And then last year it falls to 69, 88 in the second year in 2021. Averaged over 1,000 yards per season in that stretch. He's not the most explosive guy. The yards per catch are not great. The touchdowns are not amazing. He only has 18 total in his entire career so far, TDs. I do think Downs is the bigger swing, and Warren is the bigger swing. We see Chris Rodriguez go here in the 10th for people curious about interesting picks. We did get Luther Burden to come back to 1009. I don't know if this is too early, but he's the next receiver if you wanted to solve the receiver issue a little bit. At running back, my next guy right now, Sean, is Dylan Sampson. The other rookies have gone. We took Scattaboo. The rookies in this range, Bashal Tootin and Jaden Blue did go. What are you seeing?
Well, this was the other reason that I took a running back in the last round, was to keep this spot clear for Burden if he came back, which I think he's going to stop coming back. So I do think this is him. The other pick that's interesting is Bo Nix.
Bo Nix is the other one I was going to ask about. There's only one person behind us that doesn't have a QB. They went pretty zero RB. They may be running back. I like taking Burden and risking Bo Nix. We were talking very favorably about him, but at this point, Baker Mayfield just went as the QB7. We also have Drake May. We also have Justin Fields, Kyler Murray, and we can push quarterback forever. Luther Burden is the tougher. We were talking favorably about the Broncos earlier, but Bo Nix is a pick that we can live with not getting onto this roster.
Even if he comes back, Dylan Sampson, who has been falling a little bit, I think because of reports that the Browns are looking for a running back. And so again, this is one where you sort of have to parse the situation and say, are they looking for a starter? Are they just aware of the fact that their depth chart, even with Dylan Sampson and Jerome Ford, is very weak if they don't? Now, Pierre Strong is a good back. They're probably fine. The reports about looking for a back seem worse for Quinshawn Judkins than they do for Dylan Sampson. I think if you can take advantage of a Sampson fall, then I mean, you probably should do it. He's sliding back to the late 11. But man, passing on Bo Nix again when he's got an ADP in the mid 9. I like to have multiple good choices, since that's pretty fun here. We are still 2 picks away. Both of those guys could go in the next 2 picks.
I don't think Nix will go. The one drafter that didn't have a QB, this is part of the reason it's often the right decision to push QB around. We always talk about take QB when it's flat. It was not flat with Luther Burden there. Christian Kirk goes at the turn. Like that's a different tier. The drafter at the turn took Dak Prescott because they have George Pickens and Jake Ferguson. I probably should have noticed that. But you see that with quarterbacks, the stack element, and you also see just the preference for different guys, especially in these ranges where the guy can continue to slide. Quarterbacks can continue to slide and slide and slide. You said Bo Nix has a mid-round 9 ADP. Usually that guy's going to go at any other position at some point. At quarterback, that guy will just keep sliding sometimes, and he does make it back to us. I don't think he's going to slide all the way around the big side of the board. With Dylan Sampson, Sean, we took him, I think, on most of our early stuff a lot later than this. I really like him. He's clearly a good pick here. I'm very happy to take him. But we did start this team with Jonathan Taylor, RJ Harvey, Cam Scadaboo already there, and we do have a lot of other things that we can do at running back later. I don't think we're going to be in a bad running back position. So if you are feeling like, Knicks in the 11th, I don't know. I'm very comfortable with that pick at this point. This feels like if we're going to get Knicks on a main event, this is the spot where we have to do it, is the way that I'm thinking about it. We have a lot of Sampson. You think the pick is Sampson, though?
I do think it's Sampson, but you convinced me. The other thing I was looking at, which I don't think that you can count on in a redraft league, but it was interesting that both the Sutton drafter and Ingram drafter were to the left of us. So they would not have been in this full area. It was probably possible that Knicks would have come back, but there are 3 teams that need quarterbacks. Probably
that's what I looked at, was that there were 3 teams who haven't taken one yet, and I don't think people stack as much.
No, I don't.
Like Joe Burrow went ahead of Jalen Hurts in this draft, and it wasn't to T. Higgins or Jamar Chase drafter. It was just somebody at 403 that wanted Joe Burrow. They have not taken another Bengal since either. That kind of thing happened. And then Drake May goes 3 picks later. And maybe that person was waiting on Drake May specifically. I'm not sure. But I think it would have been tough to see Bo Nix come all the way back to 1209. It could have happened, though, as I was sitting there talking about how the quarterbacks can slide and slide and slide. I mean, that's the position where it can happen more than basically any other. I see what you're saying, but yeah, I mean, Dylan Sampson.
It's not impossible that Dylan Sampson will come back either.
That's
not likely, but it's not
yeah,
impossible.
It's not impossible. It'll be interesting to see. Isaac Guerrero, it was an auto pick, went at 1102 there. I've been high on him. This is still higher than you want to be on him, I think. And then also they added Brian Robinson today. Sean, what's your initial thought on Robinson? I guess my thought, it's obviously bad for Isaac Guerrero, who's been injury prone, but Isaac Guerrero's been very efficient. He's explosive, he's big, he's fast, and he can catch. And those are the things that have excited me, as you get the size and reception ability and big playability. I mean, it's sort of the whole package. And he was very efficient as both a runner and a receiver last year on a yardage basis. But hurt again with the shoulder, back in camp. And then, Quinshawn Judkins goes there at 11:10 before Dylan Sampson. He's back in camp a couple days ago, and then they trade for Brian Robinson today. So I guess that's not really a great sign for what they saw with Guerrero when he got back in camp, although they said he had stayed in really good condition because he had a shoulder injury. At any rate, Brian Robinson comes into town. He's a success rate early down plotter. I see it as kind of a bad thing for Jordan James specifically, because that seemed like the role he was going to play. If McCaffrey goes down, is the way that I would pose it, because I do think Brian Robinson will play ahead of Guerrero now as the number 2. But if McCaffrey goes down, do you think Robinson is like the handcuff to have that would have real value in this offense? Or do you think Guerrero would still have the skill-based argument to then win out, because that's kind of where I land, but I'm wondering if I'm wrong on that.
One of the issues for Garendo, which I tend to not care about and think that teams shouldn't care about, but teams do care about, is that he's just not a success rate guy. And I think the idea that they have is that, we want to stay in these great down and distance situations because then we can run all of the plays. And when we can run all of the plays, I'm going to outsmart the other team. I mean, Kyle Shanahan is like, we're going to out scheme him. We're going to outplay call him. We're going to be able to do whatever we want, march the ball up and down the field. Does it help to have a Christian McCaffrey? I mean, one of the 3 greatest running backs of all time. It obviously helps. Can you do the other things that we want to do as long as your back isn't creating negative plays? I mean, that's a frustrating way to look at it because Garendo is so dynamic. I'm glad that I don't have much of him because this seems very bad. I think it'll be a committee, and I don't think that that necessarily is super helpful when you're trying to make contingency-based picks to find league winners.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't have a ton of him either. I do land more optimistically than you from the perspective that I do think I think the success rate stuff that you mentioned is it's a great point, and I do think that's the way that a lot of the coaches do think. Robinson goes here in the 12th at 12:03 to the Judkins drafter from the 11-12, so that drafter is seeing things in the news that I would just I mean, that's fine. I could be wrong, but I would characterize it as differently than how I'm seeing things. Dylan Sampson does go right after that at 12:04. Doesn't make it back to us. Kind of a bummer. I was getting my hopes up. I do think that McCaffrey's out, for an extended period of time situation. For me, I do think the explosiveness of Garendo would eventually sort of be meaningful. But the fact that they go out and trade for a guy who is this profile and they drafted Jordan James, who is that profile, I mean, it's not promising. It's not promising. I do agree with you from that regard. Ollie Gordon goes here at 12:07. Another guy rising on the Jalen Wright injury news. I've moved him way up as well. Keaton Mitchell right now, Sean, is the top back on my board. I know on Ship Chasing last night, you called him, I think you called him the best running back in the NFL. But maybe it was not quite that optimistic. He is, he does make it to us here. Is Brandon Ayuk still there? We don't need to take that pick by any means, but he's fallen so far. Go ahead.
I mean, this almost has to be Brandon Ayuk or Marvin Mims. And Marvin Mims doesn't eliminate taking further Broncos receivers later because you can play it like we're going to win on one side of this and take a look at it. I don't think this is too early to look at Marvin Mims, but I mean, Brandon Ayuk in redraft where you're going to stash him. Yeah, you'd have to worry about injuries. You could get wiped out with injuries. You could be staring at him and say, now I can't even move my roster around, but he can't still. I mean, this isn't a good.
Yeah, I think we should take Ayuk.
I was at a loss for words there. It just seems so weird to me.
It's weird that he goes 12:09. And so Mims goes one pick behind him. I do think this is still high for Mims, Sean. But I've been wrong all along. Brandon Ayuk went in the second round last year because he was the best receiver. People, when it was the trade talks, people were talking about how he is a clear top 10 receiver. And then the Niners capitulated and paid him like one. They gave him a huge deal. He tears his knee up, and that's a concern. And he's not going to be ready for week 6, but he got hurt in week 7. He's going to be there. People are like, well, the knee injury is really bad. And I know the data on 1 year after the injury, return to play stuff isn't great. But this is the reason I'm out on Ricky Pearsall as he continues to rise and rise. People are really excited about Pearsall. You're going to have a guy who everyone was saying last year was worth a second-round pick in the talent position. This is how we evaluate receivers. From a talent perspective, you're going to have that guy dropped on his head midseason, and everyone's just acting like he won't be able to play the rest of the year when he'll be a full 12 months removed from the injury. He will have had time to heal up. That was the reason for the 6-week kind of timeline. Is it was a pretty significant injury. We need to give him some additional time. He's already running routes a little bit in camp. I mean, he's not like the 100% right now or anything, but he's like right now, he's whatever it is, 10 months removed. They're being extra cautious with him to let him come back. But he was going in the second round last year, Sean, when Debo was still on the team, and Debo didn't have the bad season yet that he had last year. Like Debo was also going very high, and a guy who had some really big seasons in years prior. And the conversation was Ayuk or Debo, and people were still that confident in Ayuk. That established teammate is gone, got traded. Jawan Jennings, breakout player, yes. Ricky Pearsall, year 2, round 1 pick, yes. But those are not the type of competition that, from a talent perspective, a guy who was going in round 2 last year, and if he is on that level, would really even be worried about, honestly. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios to me where if Ayuk can get back to even like 90% by the fantasy playoffs, he's just clearly the number one. And then you have McCaffrey and Kittle as the other key pieces. And Jawan Jennings is the one that I would actually think more than Pearsall could compete, because last year he was kind of doing that already when Ayuk was off to a slow start because of, some of the he missed a lot of the offseason, all of these things. But the camp stuff on Ayuk has been really favorable too. He's been in the meeting rooms. He's been helping the young receivers. He's been a big part of the team this year. We're back up, Sean. Keaton Mitchell swung around. Are there other guys that you're looking at here? Mims did go. You ready to take Troy Franklin?
Or too early to take Troy Franklin. Yeah, I think that this is Mitchell because he's got more upside and has more standalone value. If we had not picked a receiver, trying to get both Shipley and Keaton Mitchell would potentially have been interesting. Shipley has had a fantastic camp, but it seems like Mitchell. Is that the direction you're also leaning?
Yeah, that is my preference. I got to get Shipley moved up in my rankings, but I do have him quite a bit lower currently. So let's correct that. Yeah, I mean, Shipley, a really fun player, but the concern being the pass catching, really. I mean, we do have a mobile quarterback in both of these offenses, but Baltimore showed us last year, particularly with the Justice Hill usage, that they would use the running back not just in the passing game, but with intent. It wasn't so much Lamar getting down to the check down. They were doing play designs where Justice Hill was like the first read. There was some wheel route stuff and things like that, but there was also stuff where part of where their offense has evolved. Obviously, Baltimore, tough team to defend, but teams are going to do certain things on defense. They got to pay attention to Lamar's mobility. Their answer last year in that chess match was, we're just going to have, when Lamar sees certain things, it was pretty clear that it was like pre-snap. If he sees certain things, we're just going to have play designs where it's like what Sean Payton does. What we're talking about with RJ Harvey, it's going to be a first read, quick throw to the running back to get him the ball while he's moving still laterally. Now, he's not just standing flat-footed in the flat. He's still moving laterally to the edge, and he catches it on the run and then turns upfield. Similar to a lot of the stuff that Marvin Mims was doing in the Denver offense last year, late in the year, because they didn't have another running back that they really wanted to do that with. And that feels like it's going to be Harvey's work. That first read, quick hit stuff where you're getting it to the running back and they're not flat-footed. They have room to catch and run. It's sort of a play design. It's like an outside run, but it's a quick throw to the back. You get the PPR element and you get the big play element. The Ravens showed us that they're going to do that as part of their offense last year. And so for me with Keaton Mitchell, when I think about the ways that his upside manifests, and you can't keep him off the field after what he's done in the whole preseason drumbeat or training camp drumbeat and then preseason usage, I think he's going to take some of that from Justice Hill and have standalone, that would be some standalone value and have handcuff value. Whereas Shipley to me feels more like a pure handcuff. And even if he does play because of a Saquon Barkley injury, I'm concerned that they still won't throw to the backs enough. Anyway, so an involved breakdown of the two offenses. Is that too involved, do you think, for these two plays?
No, I think that's exactly right. One of the things I noted in writing Shipley up is that he's getting so much buzz as a receiver. And I think that there's this kind of interesting difference between him and Barkley, where you can hand the ball to Barkley and he's in space. With Shipley, you might need to throw it to him. And so even an offense that doesn't throw the ball to the backs, it might evolve a little bit. if you lose a Saquon Barkley. So maybe they maintain a little bit more than that. But no, that's exactly the way that people should be thinking about like kind of the most likely scenario and how things would play out. One of the things in terms of writing up Keaton Mitchell is just to understand not only how good he is as a runner, but the team is really promoting him as a receiver. I think to get everybody ready for the fact that Justice Hill will be less involved because Justice Hill's also good, had a good season last year.
Yes.
I mean, he's one of my favorites. He should be a fan favorite, but the team wants people to know. I mean, it's going to be the Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell show.
You have to have Keaton Mitchell on the field. It's unfortunate for Justice Hill for the reasons you said. He's a really good player and he belongs as part of the offense to the extent that it makes sense. But at this point, you can't keep Keaton Mitchell off the field situation. Hill will still play, but he's undraftable. Unfortunately, he had a really good receiving role last year. He's had over 500 yards from scrimmage both the last 2 years and did it different ways. It was more running the ball in 2023 and then more receiving in 2024 after they brought in Henry and his rushes actually cratered as a secondary back. They were never high in 2023 either, but he got more of the rush split in 2023 with no Henry. And so he gets to 500 yards from scrimmage both years in different ways, and it's kind of cool. Shows that he has these different skills. Really like Justice Hill. Cool what he's been able to make out of his career despite some Achilles, issues. Able to bounce back and be a productive player and all of those things, but he's just unfortunately in the wrong place at the wrong time when you have Derrick Henry and then you have Keaton Mitchell looking like he's the most dynamic change of pace back that you could possibly have. And your offense the Ravens understand you have to get the ball to playmakers, and they're going to prioritize that. I think we are back up. Did Kyle Williams go? I'm not into him, but this is feels late. Cade Otton, with all of the injuries there, feels like a decent tight end too. I mean, these are weird picks for what we normally do. What are you seeing on your board right now?
I've got a lot of running backs I would still like to take, and it's kind of a matter of making space for them and trying not to lose Harold Fannin. That's the way I'm kind of seeing it.
Yeah.
DJ Giddens would be the guy that, unless we want to really elevate other people, is Giddens someone that you're okay putting on one of these teams?
Yes. Yeah. I'm certainly not very, very low on DJ Giddens because of your evaluation of him. Bluntly, it's a tricky. I mean, with the Tyler Goodson injury, he should be right there with Will Shipley, right?
I think he'll play some as a standalone guy too. And if he breaks some plays,
I strongly don't think that's going to happen. I've had that argument with a few people. I'm probably going to be wrong, but that just doesn't. They did not use a number 2 at all last year. That's not how they've run this offense. It's an RPO heavy offense. They'll run the ball with the QB some, and then it's been all Jonathan Taylor in addition to the QB runs. And I know that was with Anthony Richardson, so maybe it's a little more rotational with a little bit more of a normal feel to it with Daniel Jones. But it's like the QB is the second runner, and the second runners had no volume last year. So that's where I probably not quite as.
I think that the
strongly as
difference
you're
for
saying.
me is that the second they don't really have a backup. They didn't have a backup. And that's one of the reasons that Giddens is so interesting, is that they don't have a third string guy. They don't have a fourth string guy. And so, unlike the unfortunate situation with the 49ers, I don't think you'd be seeing any split work. I think you'd be seeing DJ Giddens. But
in a handcuff situation, he'd be the guy. Yes.
Right. But then the other thing is that once you have a guy who's interesting, then you give him some touches, whereas you wouldn't. Ooh. So Harold Fannin goes really early. We don't have to worry about that.
1502 for Harold Fannin.
Yeah. I mean, that's where he should be.
Yeah, it is. But we've been able to
He does go ahead of Johnny Smith, but that is.
And Cade Otton, who, I'm sorry, Cade Otton is like suddenly one of the only healthy dudes in that passing game. Like second, I don't think he matters, but people should be taking, I mean, people who like tight ends like that should be taking him so that we can take these guys. Jalen Coker is a guy, Sean, that I think lengthens our receiver room if you're interested in him with those conversations of a trade. We also, I think you want to probably consider Troy Franklin at some point, and we can also go running back. I'm fine with any of that. What are you thinking?
So I guess the person I'd be the least happy with losing, even though he would be likely to come back, is Jarquez Hunter.
Okay. he feels like another pretty pure handcuff to me. I know you see these things differently than me sometimes, but we get both Giddens and Hunter. Mike, I don't have them as aggressively ranked as you, but these are the plays that I've made a living off of. Not purely a living, but I've deferred to you on these decisions for a long time and been smart to do so. So I will continue to make that a focal point. Another guy I wanted to ask you about. So Pat Bryant goes there is Brashard Smith, who you've mentioned. Is it just that he's been falling, or would he be in the discussion in this range for you, or are you just trying to get a good price?
So Smith and Monangai are both going ahead of Hunter. I think that Monangai also has a chance to be the starter. I don't think that Brashard Smith does, but I think that he will have a McKinnon-like role by the fantasy playoffs. He might be somebody where we get pushed a little bit in terms of keeping him if we need to make moves over the first month. One of the things that we'll want to discuss when we finish is that we have drafted a very starting lineup heavy team. So we're going to be a little bit of we're to the whims of fate here a bit, where we do need our first 7 guys to stay healthy.
Right. That's why I like the Coker pick on this one, because we have both Addison and Ayuk. But
I guess I just don't see it. Now, I mean, I really like him, but I just think it's going to be McMillan and then hopefully Sanders. And I don't know that they're going to support someone else to the point where it's an important fantasy play. Let me, well, maybe I should just keep the Jarquez Hunter stuff to myself. Ben, one of the things that is interesting about the whole deal with the Kyron Williams extension is that he just wasn't very good last year. And I think they like him, and he is good in short yardage. But the extension, I think, has really distorted the way people see this backfield, where everything that you're hearing out of LA is that Jarquez Hunter is the best guy, and that like the writers already kind of want him to be the guy this year. And the other interesting thing with that is that when they talk about Jarquez Hunter, they talk about him being the pass catching back. They talk about him being the explosive back. They talk about him being the hardest hitting back. They talk about him as the guy they want for the goal line. And you're like, dude, what do you guys not want him to do? Those are all the roles.
So, number one, I feel like maybe it's the sun, but Rams beats have done this with a ton of dudes. And sometimes they've been right with like Puka Nacua, but they hype up everybody like a ton. And so, I mean, like Blake Corum was getting positive buzz last year, maybe not to this degree, but I mean, I remember the buzz with the, like, what was it? Jacob Harris and all those guys. And obviously Puka ended up being good. Jordan Whittington last year, maybe Whittington will be fun this year. Tutu Atwell's always going to have a breakout year. It's everybody every year. Tyler Johnson one year was like getting all this buzz. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I like hearing what's going on, but there's just a lot of optimism. I think they're getting enough vitamin D.
So I do. That's something to be aware of, right? But the thing about Jarquez Hunter is that his profile actually backs that up. I mean, Tutu had actually just crazy yards per route run in college, and Puka has hit. But there's a big difference between somebody who, like in any other draft, would have been. I mean, I just think Jarquez Hunter and RJ Harvey should have gone in very similar areas of the draft, and obviously you would look at it differently that way. If you look at it differently that way, but also the team seems very open to. I think it's the team thing where I get the impression that they're not nearly as committed to Kyron Williams as the workhorse.
The contract isn't. When I saw the contract, I thought the same thing. I was like, they really like the guy. They're giving him a decent deal. He doesn't get like a massive, reset the market deal. He gets about a little bit more than 15 million guaranteed, but it's over like several seasons. And the cap number sort of escalates and they can move on from it. It's like a 2-year deal. And there's 15 million guaranteed. And I think he would make more than that over 2 years, but there's like not a lot of dead money into the third year. It's less than 3 million. And his cap number, gets up there in those final 2 seasons. And like the last year, it's $10 million in base salary and, a little bit of prorated signing bonus, but none of it's guaranteed. None of it's guaranteed even in 2027. So like I was looking at this deal and I was like, this is like a good backup level deal. I mean, it's not. I mean, obviously it's more than that, but it's not. He didn't get like a huge contract by any means. So I don't think that part of it is crazy when you talk about that. The other element I have an issue with, though, Sean, is the Blake Corum stuff. And not just that he's playing ahead of him, but like he looked pretty good to me, like watching it. I said number one, that stuff. Number two for me is I haven't seen this with Jarquez Hunter in the games in the preseason. I feel like he hasn't looked that amazing. I've seen like he looked good in the second preseason game. I want to be clear. And a few snaps in the preseason shouldn't really inform your opinion relative to the profile that you're talking about. That's very, very, very strong. But the fact that he's playing behind Corum and Corum actually looked a little shiftier at times to my eye has been a little bit of a roadblock for me. And maybe that's just me not being creative enough mentally because he has the way better profile than Blake Corum. And I'm obviously not seeing the reports that you're seeing. You're way better at sifting through that stuff. So I'm glad we have him after everything you just said. I'm very glad we have him. We are back on the clock here. Monangai did go. Roshan Johnson went, who I like. Troy Franklin went, who you don't like. Troy Franklin went. Harold Fannon's already gone. Kate Otten started to look pretty good. No, I'm just kidding. We don't have to take Kate Otten by any means, but I don't know where I would really push us at this point either. Is it Brashard Smith? Jalen Coker did. Oh, you took Jalen Coker. All right. So we got Jalen Coker on the team. You don't see the
somebody really wanted Jalen Coker. Jalen Coker is good. Jalen Coker is an athlete. He's one of Blair's favorite players. You know that somebody likes a dude when they're an undrafted free agent. They're probably not going to make the team. No one else on earth is drafting him. And Blair's just like, I'm going to put him in the round 18 of all of my best ball teams. And then he goes out and he is fantastic as a rookie. Then we're swiftly heading for that Bryce Young last round pick. I was going to float JJ McCarthy as a possibility. This is another team where we have Addison. We did the piece in a recent pod where we talked about how you can take a guy like a Patrick Mahomes, you can take a guy like a Bo Nix, and if you have a really wide range of outcomes, QB late in a flat area, and you want to go for that second guy, you can do that. I thought that McCarthy for me is sort of the pick where, I mean, it's a little bit of a Drake May arbitrage play. He actually goes to the same drafter who took Drake May. We had a Drake May, JJ McCarthy team, I believe, where that's sort of our thesis as well. But he did go before our pick.
I'm messing with my rankings right now as we navigate some dead air. So we did take Coker. You're talking about attacking QB2 at this point, which I'm not, for any meaningful reason, opposed to.
So I think before we do that, do you have a preference, like a strong preference between Jatavian Sanders and Pat Freiermuth that would push you to really want one of them on the roster as opposed to adding Royals for that second chief and getting that look ahead potential massive blow up week one? If it does work out that Rice is out, I mean, maybe Royals isn't as compelling now that it doesn't look like Rice will be out. Do you have a thought on Royals?
2 weeks still. He could definitely still be out. There's 2 weeks still. I have Sanders as a target and not Freiermuth, but it's not a huge. It's the same tier to me. If you want to go Royals, I want to. So we take Jalen Royals there. Good. Add there. You're super into him. I have him a little bit behind the other rookie receivers. I don't think you ever wrote that piece you mentioned that I kind of spoiled, but I loved the piece idea. I told you
it hasn't come out yet.
It's coming. All right.
Anybody who wants the answers can go back through our shows and find where Ben did give them all.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I was like, this is a great piece idea because I'm seeing the same thing. Here's all the players that I love. But Alec Ayo Manor, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Jalen Lane, Malik Washington are four that I really like, in addition to Jalen Royals. But I have all four of those guys ahead of him right now, and they are all still there as well. But Ayo Manor went, but the take a peek element is compelling, and so I'm glad that we get him there. I want to ask you about what I was saying about Hunter and watching him in the preseason. I don't watch the prospect film quite as much as you do. And more importantly, I'm wondering if I'm just missing it, or you're like, hey, Ben, you're massively overreacting. But I know you watch the preseason as well. So the other answer might be I'm seeing it differently. I'm kind of curious what you think about that, how he's looked in game action in the two preseason games, because you're into Jarquez Hunter, and I know you watch the preseason players specifically of the guys that you like. So what have you seen in that? Just watching the games.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed with what the reports have been and the way that he can look. It wasn't what I had hoped, which was interesting. And sometimes that's good because all the articles leading up to that game were he has dominated the joint practices. He's going to be absolutely unleashed in this preseason game, and everybody's going to see what we're seeing. And then you watch it, and you're like, there's a decent run or two in there, but more or less it's just fine. And part of you is like, I mean, this was the chance to generate some excitement and, like, quote, be right about a guy that you've been excited about. But the other part of me was just like, thank goodness we keep the ADP in check, because having another guy who zooms up into round 12, I mean, that doesn't suit our purposes. But no, I think that you're right in that he didn't stand out in the preseason game.
Got it. Okay. But you're still very into it. I was wondering if you were seeing it differently, and perhaps I was missing something. But he did show a little bit of lateral shiftiness. He's a different type of run in the Quorum. When I say Quorum looks better, Quorum's a little smaller and a little bit shiftier when he does it right. But also you can see where, like, yeah, he's like good, but maybe not great. We are back up on the clock. So Jatavian Sanders goes, 4 tight ends go. Pat Fryermuth still there. I do have him ahead of Jonnu Smith, who's also. Oh no, Jonnu Smith went. I like Fryermuth here a lot. Is there another guy that you would be looking at?
It's just our last chance. And so if you had a Keandre Lambert-Smith preference, I mean, we'll be able to add tight ends as well, and probably for a lower price. It's kind of that thing of if we think that Lambert-Smith is going to.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do that. We'll worry about the tight end too later. I didn't realize this was the last round, but I mean, it's the 18th round. We have to go a kicker and a DST in 19 and 20. You have to leave the draft with one of each. I was missing that a little bit. So we get Royals and Keandre Lambert-Smith as take a peeks. Lambert-Smith ran ahead of Trey Harris in that last preseason game and got multiple shots from Justin Herbert. I feel very strongly, as far as the take a peek element works on FFPC, I feel very strongly he's going to get air yards in that first game. And so pretty excited about actually having him as a take a peek. If he gets, it could just be 2 catches, but it could be 2 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. And then you're like, okay, well, that's actually a really usable game. This is a roster where, we start with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Xavier Worthy is in the take a peek as well. We'll know what he did. Maybe he has a disappointing game in whatever world. He's not going to. Jalen Waddle and Jerry Jeudy. And then Jordan Addison, Luther Burden, and Brandon Ayuk. And so we do have 4 receivers near the top. There are scenarios where if one of Coker or Royals or Lambert-Smith had really strong games, we'd feel pretty good. So we do wind up with 1, 2, 3, 4. We end up with 10 wide receivers on this team, Sean. 2 of them are going to be out for the first 3 games. So that's part of the play there. Just the 1 QB, just the 1 running back, 6 tight end, 6 running backs. It's still a pretty good roster, right?
a lot of fun. Now we unfortunately do have to take a kicker in a defense. Houston is the kind of the high visibility defense here. They're on the road against the Rams in week 1. Not perfectly ideal.
Cam Little,
Ah,
right? Or do
it
you have a
does seem
D?
like Cam Little. Well,
Yeah.
no, I don't. Cam
Yeah,
Little
yeah.
or Jake Elliott.
You were gonna circle
So
back to Cam Little. I knew where you're going. I
let's,
just
you're like,
I just
let's
cut
stop
you
wasting
off.
time. Stop wasting time and make the pick.
Just pick the guy that you're always gonna pick here, Cam Little. Did you see that he made a 70-yard field goal, Ben? that's where that was going.
I mean, I've got visions of 20 points per game for Cam Little, and like mid-season redraft, people are like, is round 4 too early? This guy has the most value over replacement in the entire NFL.
Oh, it's fantastic. He did play last year. Like he's not a first timer like Brandon Aubrey. He had a full season last year where he was very good. He made 27 out of 29 field goals. His long was 59 yards. He made every extra point, only missed 2 kicks with a long of 59. I mean, the guy's good. He was a 21-year-old kicker last year. You're predicting very famously. Shawn Siegele predicts year 2 breakouts for kickers. The model shows age 21 rookie, just turned 22 here in August. Young kicker, still growing into his leg, you could say. Going into age 22, guy can boom it. He's making 70-yarders now. This is going to be the year 2 breakout to end all year 2 breakouts at kicker.
We have to look at him
I'm
as
in.
a faller in round 19. I mean, a kicker like that you take in the kicker and defense window, Ben, doesn't even make sense.
In the window. Phenomenal stuff. So, as we wait for the defense to swing back around and Shawn looks at the schedule and I just wait for him to decide what we're going to do at defense, I'm going to recap the team for the listeners. Bo Nix, Jonathan Taylor, RJ Harvey, Cam Scattaboo, Keaton Mitchell, DJ Giddens, Jarquez Hunter. I am a little concerned about that back end, like how much they're actually going to play, but we're playing Jonathan Taylor and RJ Harvey every week. We're going to be flexing wide receivers. We're going to be fine, I think, in the early going. A lot of receiver depth. And Keaton Mitchell, I think, could be playable, maybe even before Cam Scattaboo, if he takes enough of that Justice Hill work. We never really finished that conversation. Hill will still get some touches. And so it's possible that Mitchell's not actually really playable. He's just getting some. It's a question of how much he gets as a change of pace, whether there's still a third back involved. And probably in the early going, they're not going to just completely box out Justice Hill. But that could become a standalone role over time, it feels like. Scattaboo, if he gets healthy, could become one fairly early as well. And you're seeing it with Giddens as a possibility. And so I'll be interested in that. But we do have a little bit of risk there, I think it's fair to say. At receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Jordan Addison, Luther Burden. We take the Brandon Ayuk value, so we have both Addison and Ayuk sort of clogging things a little. But we still had enough room for all of Jalen Coker, Jalen Royals, and Keandre Lambert-Smith, the really fun wide receivers late. Shawn, I wrote you an email the other day, just out of the blue. Sometimes I have thoughts and I decide I want to send them to you. And it was that I wouldn't mind doing a draft in one of these mains where we get pretty running back heavy early. Take, obviously some early receivers, but maybe running back or tight end heavy early. Maybe we take an elite QB, whatever. But we're in a position where we kind of need a late round receiver and we hammer a bunch of them like we like to do at running back, or sometimes when we push tight end, we like to take a lot of tight ends late. It would be fun to take all of these upside wide receivers that we like onto one build. We do here get 3 of them in a situation where, we did take only 2 wide receivers in the first 5 rounds. So it's helpful to have some of these swings, but Coker, Royals, Lambert-Smith, 3 of the guys in that aforementioned upcoming late round wide receiver article that I keep spoiling from Shawn Siegele. We will all be there, I promise. Fantastic trio of picks from round 16 to 18. It would not surprise me, Shawn, if we talk all the time about you can't get real upside from the late rounds. If we actually do get some meaningful hits out of this rookie wide receiver group that has gotten overlooked a little because how good the rookie running backs are, there's some fun ones. Coker, obviously a second-year option here, but I think he's just meaningfully undervalued. I mentioned Alec Ayo Manor. We don't go to Jalen Lane. Malik Washington, another second-year guy that fits here. We do get Royals and Lambert Smith. Shawn, we are on deck. Who is the defense choice for us here?
You got to go with the Los Angeles Chargers home for the look ahead and against a Kansas City Chiefs offense and offensive line that got humiliated in the Super Bowl. They've addressed that. Their controversial, at least in my mind, first round pick at tackle has been the talk of camp. Hopefully he will solidify things. But Ben, we've got some Dallas. They're hardly dramatically more likely to put up points against the Eagles than the Chargers are against the Chiefs. We probably need to split a little bit in that direction and then probably come back with a defensive swap to the New York Jets for the actual entry in week 1. Is that how you're seeing it?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't how I was seeing it, but it's how I'm seeing it now because I wasn't seeing anything until he told me what the play was at defense. So we finish with Cam Little and the Chargers defense. I didn't say our tight end. It's Brock Bowers. So I read the whole team. I read the receivers, got off on my little tangent, but we get Brock Bowers there. The starting lineup week 1, we're going to have Bo Nix in there. We're going to have Jonathan Taylor and RJ Harvey. We're probably going to have JSN, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Waddle, and Jerry Jeudy with Brock Bowers at tight end. That's a really fun starting lineup. And then there's all sorts of receiver depth. I mean, Addison and Ayuk off the bench, Luther Burden on the bench, all those late receivers. And then also a lot of screaming upside running backs. Like I said, a little thinner there. And obviously don't have a backup QB or a backup tight end. But we don't always need those. And we've never, made it a must-have that we get a second at either of those positions, especially when you start with Bowers. What are your thoughts on it? Are there directions that you wish we would have went maybe differently that stuck out to you throughout? How are you feeling?
I like it. Again, you got to draft teams that you're going to have fun with. I think this team has immense upside. It is kind of leaning into health early and then stacked with, Ben, this team, by the time the fantasy playoffs roll around, should be one of the best teams we've ever had. It should be one of the best teams we've ever had. It has Jordan Addison, Luther Burden, and Brandon Ayuk at receiver stashes. It's kind of a situation where I wanted to ask you, if now that you know how we drafted the rest of it, do you wish you could go back and just take Travion Henderson in round 3? I'm looking at that pick of JSN and thinking, if this team breaks the right way, we're not even necessarily starting JSN in the fantasy playoffs.
That's you've broken my brain. That's not the one that I had, there wasn't one that I had fixated on or anything, but that's not necessarily where I thought you would go with it. But we were talking about that at the time. That's before we went on the air. And for people who weren't listening, I think I can't remember exactly. I don't know how you remember it, but I think I was kind of pushing for Henderson a little. And I think you were right that it was smart to get the receiver and get us room to take Harvey because you don't know how the rest of it's going to play out. But to your point, once you know that you get all these other receivers, you get the Xavier Worthy value in 4. And then you get Waddle, Jeudy, you get Addison in 8, Burden in 10, and Ayuk in 12. Each of those even rounds falling all the way back to us. We took a receiver that we really liked. That middle part of this room wasn't necessarily looking at the same receivers as us in each of these rounds coming back. And so really, if you look at these even rounds, the long side of the board, we took Worthy in 4 at a value. We took Waddle in 6 at a value. We took Addison in 8 at a value. We took Burden in 10, who's going a little bit behind that, but we think is a value there, and we like the pick. We took Ayuk in 12 at a value. We five straight picks on that side of the board we decided were the wide receiver was what the room gave us coming back that direction. And so, if you knew that, if you knew all those trends going in, Henderson would have supercharged the running back room. I keep talking about sort of the lack of depth. And I mentioned the starting lineup, which I don't usually do. And probably that was the insecurity about our depth because the starting lineup sounds great when you say it, but Addison and Ayuk being hurt, well, one hurt, one suspended, they're the first two guys off the bench eventually. You have Scadaboo, you have Luther Burden. Those guys may not be contributors in the first 3 weeks. And then beyond that, it's Keaton Mitchell, DJ Giddens, Jarquez Hunter. I mean, Jalen Coker I really liked the pick on this team because I think he's the easiest one to actually play. He's probably going to get a lot of routes week 1 if they do move Adam Thielen. And just the talk that they're talking about moving him, I think probably it gets done. And even if it doesn't, it seems to indicate they want to get Coker on the field. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But I guess I'm hoping that Jalen Coker is going to be startable in the first couple of weeks. Jordan Addison will be back week 4. It's kind of funny we took Addison and Coker because you were talking about how Thielen might hurt Addison, and yet the Coker thesis is that Thielen is going to get traded, and so you kind of have both sides of that. But it is a situation where, as you talked about, we are thin in the early part of the season until at least Addison gets back and until one of these other running backs gets a real meaningful role. That should be Scadaboo before too long. He's not – Brian Dable has been the most – a lot of the head coaches have been very difficult about the injuries, but Brian Dable has been the most difficult. But Scadaboo is not expected to be hurt for much of the season, correct? I mean, would it be surprising if he plays quite a bit in week 1 from what you're hearing?
No, I don't think so. I mean, right now he's third on the depth chart behind, one of our other previous 0 RB guys there. But I mean, again, the camp reports were absolutely fantastic. The thing that was pretty nerve-wracking was that as early as or as recently as Monday, there were reports that there was no end in sight to his injury recovery, and he might not be ready for the season to start. The next day he practices. Last night he plays in the preseason game. Seems like he's fine. So again, I don't think
I
you're going
missed that. I haven't seen last night's preseason games. I didn't realize he played in the preseason game last night.
He's good to go. And so it's a question of how quickly does he become the guy? Because Ben, this price here at 904 is basically what I would be prepared to pay for him if I didn't know that he was going to be ready for the season. And so, I mean, I probably would lean Bashal Tootin, right? And so you say, well, Tootin, I thought might come back to us in 10. One of the things about that pick in 10, and one of the things you're trying to kind of clear a little space for, clear space for. I mean, I'm glad that we took Scadaboo instead of Pittman in retrospect. That was one of the picks that we debated because we ended up then very thin at running back. It's kind of a weird thing that we took Giddens with a Jonathan Taylor team, and yet that actually probably works out fine for this roster because I do think that you're not going to get the same thing for Giddens, but I like the fact that the team is set up now that we have a little bit of that round 2 pick backed up with the weakness. But to take Scadaboo, have Burden come back instead of Tootin, which was the other possibility, really, then maybe you were like, well, if we'd taken Pittman, then you have Tootin there. If you don't know that Scadaboo's healthy, maybe you just take Tootin. He's the guy that I think is going to be a rocket ship player. I mean, Scadaboo and Tootin, those are the players we took early in our early main events and look like bad ADP selections. So many of the other picks on those teams have risen so many rounds. You're like, thank goodness we drafted some teams then. We would never be able to put those teams together today. Those picks look weird. And yet at the same time, I'm just glad I have those guys on the roster at more or less any price. And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited about Scadaboo, but I do think it's going to be later, right? You want to put these teams together to accomplish both things. And that's one of the things that 2025 gives you. You think about the past, you think about 0 RB, and maybe you're taking some really low scores at running back in the early going. Then we're hoping to not take low scores because we've got Jonathan Taylor and RJ Harvey. You've got all these other guys ready to break out. And I think Tyrone Tracy is good. So it's not inevitable, but I mean, Cam Scadaboo, I mean, you think about that rookie year from Najee Harris, and that's kind of what you anticipate from Cam Scadaboo, except him being a little better. But I mean, he's the kind of guy where a team would get to see him play for a bit. And certainly if Tracy gets dinged up, which guys do who are out there playing, and then they're like, wait, we can put a guy out there who's the best pass catcher and is going to hit everybody and is going to run through people. And the other team doesn't even want to play us anymore in the fourth quarter. Oh, and we're going to have Malik Neighbors out there, and we're going to move to Jackson Dart, and we're going to actually be good. It's like, do we want to stick to our preseason narrative about Russell Wilson and Tyrone Tracy, or do we want to be good? It seems like a pretty easy choice, but again, it's not going to be week 1.
Yeah. The Tootin stuff, super fun to hear. He would have been fun to get on this team if he would have came back around. As we know, he's going to be going in round 2 next year, right, Shawn? And then
That's right.
I loved your breakdown of how our thin running back room makes it so that DJ Giddens was a good pick for this team as a handcuff to Jonathan Taylor. That was the first that I realized that we handcuffed our back. Be honest, that was the first you realized it as well as you were working through it.
I realized it right after we clicked it, but I've kept it myself until then.
You realized it after we clicked it. But yeah, sometimes you forget which backs you took in the first couple rounds. We went ahead and handcuffed, which we basically never do. And yet I love your breakdown that your spin that it was strategic. It actually it made sense. I mean, it's pretty important that Jonathan Taylor's healthy and productive in the way that we got a little fragile at running back in the early rounds. And if he does go down, we're going to need another starter. So to get you talked about it with Giddens, he's the only RB2 with Goodson hurt. I mean, he's going to be the clear backup there. Yeah, we would start Giddens the next week if that happens. So we are set up there. It takes a little bit of the upside out. It also makes things a little bit safer, which is important in the early going as well, because we have so many receivers on this roster. We're stashing Ayuk. We're stashing Addison. We don't even have that many upside swings at running back on this team. It's still going to work out. It's a little bit fragile. I liked something you said when you were on with the ship chasing guys last night, that there's this false sense of security this year in a lack of depth right now, because last year the running back stayed healthy and everyone kind of stayed healthy, although the receivers didn't necessarily. The receiver stuff became a problem. Yeah, most of them did. That false sense of security, we're going to get a reminder in season this year that the depth is pretty key. Hopefully it doesn't impact this roster. But it's a fun team.
Yeah, at least if I'm looking at it correctly, our first bye is actually in week 8. Our first bye among the starters. Right. And so again, you're really hoping for health, but at least we won't hit that additional hurdle of having buys, which, I mean, buys, they're not going to go away just because your starting lineup is thin. So we do have some time from that perspective, if I'm looking at it correctly.
I already closed it out, so we're going to take your word for it. But this is a very fun team, and yeah, we'll probably have more on the RotoViz airwaves soon.
Awesome. This has been a special main event edition of Stealing Bananas. I'm Shawn Siegele. With me, as always, is Ben Gretch. Make sure you are following him at Yards Per Gretch and subscribed to Stealing Signals. He gave you a sense of a few of the pieces that he has had out recently. I want to make the pitch that he made during the show a couple weeks ago, which is that for $19.99, you can get the 1-month sub, get the full draft kit, get all of these articles he's talking about. He suggested that. I think you want to take the full year sub, because Stealing Signals in season, the article that you have to be reading if you want to win your league every week. We'd love to have you guys over at RotoViz. The coupon code there is RVRadio2025 at checkout for 10% off your 1-year sub. Blair has some cool pieces coming out. Kevin has some cool pieces coming out. The Zero RB Countdown is out. Hope to have some other fun things. We love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.